Hello, welcome to the To Kill a Lion broadcast. I'm Suzanne Lynn with author Bruce Lengeman, not just an author, but a good friend. And I'm so glad to be able to have some time to share about his book. And Bruce, welcome to the show. Welcome to your show.
It's good to be here. Thank you, Suzanne.
You know, we've been planning this night for a long time because this is the launch of your book, To Kill a Lion. You've written other books. This is such a big deal, and it's so personal that we want to get out the message. And why don't you just start with what the book To Kill a Lion is all about, Bruce?
Well, the book To Kill a Lion is about my journey, and it's my journey into understanding male sexuality. As a counselor, professional counselor, I was counseling sexually addicted men. It seemed like in the counseling agency, every man who was sexually addicted, they assigned to me, and I tell them, like what I did for myself, you got to fear God more. And I often say, you go down to your farm and home store and buy horse blinders so that you won't see anything tempting.
Right.
And,
just act right, act better.
That's
just don't
right.
do it. Yeah,
that's right. You've got it right on. And I was smug because literally, I did not do the porn. I did not do the movies, the magazines, the mental images, none of that. And, but what happened was I realized through the process, through an encounter with a sexual therapist who told me that I was a sexual addict.
Wait a minute. You didn't do the images, the porn, anything like that, but he said you had a sexual problem.
I had a sexual problem, and that I was a master suppressor. So what he showed me, and I'm making a really long, good story short, what he showed me is something that changed my whole life, and that changed not only the way I counsel with sexual addiction, but the way I counsel in almost every arena. That issues that people have on the outside are really issues of the heart. And that man showed me that although I wasn't acting out inside, I wanted deeply to, but all I knew to do is keep that lion in the cage. That's where I got the name for the book, to keep that lion in the cage. And so the book takes off where a lot of books end. Like you can get Every Man's Battle, Every Man's Battle, and it says, sex is wrong, don't do it. Great book. You need that. But mine takes up where they left off, answering the question, I know it's wrong, but why can't I stop?
So you're basically saying that behavioral modification, that's just not going to do it. I mean, you cannot just change what you're doing. It's got to be a heart change to break this sexual porn addiction.
You can't overcome sexual addiction by fighting sex. It comes from root issues, like any addiction. Now, there's one thing I have to make clear. It's still good that you modify your behavior. If you're a sexual addict or a drug addict or a workaholic or any other kind of addiction, it's still good. But if you're relying on behavior modification 10 years from now, literally 10 years from now, you're going to have the illusion that something good has happened, but that junk is still going to be in your heart.
It's still there. That's why it's not called To Tame a Lion. It's To Kill a Lion, right?
Well, that's right. Well, I went to a conference one. I was invited to speak at a conference, and the pastor called the conference To Tame a Tiger. And I said, we ain't taming anything here. We're have to kill.
He's going down for good.
That's right.
Well, we want to welcome you. If you're just joining us, thank you so much. I'm Suzanne Lynn with Bruce Lengeman, author of To Kill a Lion. And this is his live launch party. We're inviting you to be part of the conversation. We want to hear your comments. We're ready to have just a really raw conversation. And it's not just a men pornography problem. Women have pornography problems too.
Right.
And this book is very much what Bruce is talking about. Modification of your heart, finding out maybe what's happened from when you were a child that gave you the feelings and, the addiction that you have today, right? So please don't be embarrassed. Jump in, leave a comment, leave a question, even just tell us where you're listening from. If that's what you want to do, we'd love to know that you're from all around the country listening to this live broadcast. So Bruce, let's go ahead and get started with some things that I've heard you say before, and I want you to expound on. Like, you talk about behavior modification is good, but it's most often a losing battle without heart transformation, changing it and supporting it. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, that's a really big subject, because that is, I often say that the journey towards sexual freedom, and that's the subhead of my book. The subhead of my book is Transforming Your Life Through Sexual Freedom. And really, that journey to overcome sexual lust, sexual dependency is, I mean, when you get to it, it's a journey that's going to transform your life, because the root issues are the fertile ground where lust is conceived. And so when we talk about those hard issues, what are we talking about? We're talking about people that carry shame in their life. I mean, I can do a message to men, and maybe 5 out of 100 will say they carry shame, until I deal with what shame is and how it feels, whatever. And then maybe 75% will say they have shame. And really, some of these issues are very hidden. And there's a couple of things that run parallel. Heart issues. Identity is a big one. And when I say identity, I mean our God identity. That part of our discipleship of being, coming into be a believer in the kingdom of God, is knowing who God is in us and who we are in God. And so many men walk underneath, and whenever they walk underneath, there is that void that the brain tries to fill with superficial fixes.
And it's good for a little while, you've said, but then you need more. You need to up the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's a lot of guys that say, well, you know, I just dabble around with a little bit of pornography. And I say, no, you don't dabble around with a little bit of pornography, because you're not big enough to overcome the wiles of the devil. Because once you get a foothold, you're going to have a dependency, because those dopamine, adrenaline highs actually create neural pathways in your brain that cause you to desire it more.
Bruce, before we jump into the next comment that I've heard you talk about, I want you to expound on. Tim just jumped in and said, hey, it's a great book. God bless. Thank you so much, Tim. Crystal's checking in from Oakland, Florida, and she said, yes, heart change. That's what it's about. But we did get a question from James in Ormond Beach, and he said, hi, Pastor. Can a person who isn't a Christian, or a Christian perhaps who is really struggling with faith issues, can they find help and relatability in your book? Great question, James. Thank you.
Yes, it's a really good question. But I will say it from a different standpoint. I am not saying that just Christians can find this victory. For me to say that only believers out there that have found an internal psychological, physiological victory over addiction and sex, I'd be wrong. That would be very narrow-minded. But I do say that as believers, we need the help of God. Yeah. We need the power of the Holy Spirit that reveals truth. And I go to a verse, and that's John chapter 8, 32 to 36, and says, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And what that means is that almost every issue a man has in life, or with regard to the sexuality, it's a lie. Every issue is based on a lie, and the Lord gives truth to dispel the darkness. Suzanne, if I could make one comment with that you mentioned, okay, was it Crystal who made the comment? I would say many women have read my book. Although I wrote it to men, the same issues are fertile ground for women, and it manifests itself a little different. But I got more response than I ever dreamed of from women who read this book. But also, it's helped women understand their husband, their man.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, look, I'll be honest. I mean, it's hard for women not to take it personally when you're not a size 6, or you're not gorgeous Hollywood star, and you know your significant other, your boyfriend or whatever is looking at porn. You're like, I don't measure up, and I guess I'm not going to. I'm never going to look like them. You know, if that's what turns you on, we might as well just stop now. You know.
Yes.
We need help.
Yep. Yep. And you know, as we enter into this journey, As men, it's like this. It's like Jenga. You ever play Jenga?
I have. It's the one where it builds and then you have to take the pieces out.
And then you have to take these strategic things out.
Okay.
Sometimes, and I've met this, and I can tell you story after story, that a man would pull out one lie and the whole sexual lust building fell down because it was that one lie that was driving it.
Wow.
But sometimes it's like an onion, and there are so many layers of woundedness, so many things out of line, but you go from layer to layer to layer till you get to the core.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're talking with Bruce Lengeman. He wrote the book To Kill a Lion, Dealing with Sexuality, Transforming Your Life Through Sexual Freedom. That's about pornography and that cycle that keeps going. And I want to just say hello to Andrea from Jamaica. Like, is that Jamaica? That's pretty cool. Walter from Apaka.
Hold on.
Okay.
Andrea is one of my favorite missionaries.
Okay.
Andrea, I love you. Good. Wish I could see you. I see a picture of you, but I haven't been able to get to Jamaica because of the COVID. But it's one of my favorite places to go. Yes.
That's wonderful. Listen, if you leave a comment, I want to tell you that Bruce is going to be doing some giveaways for his book. So leave a comment, whether that's where you're watching, whether you say, God bless America, whatever comment. If you're afraid to ask a question, that's fine. You're going to be entered for the drawing for several of his books, for several copies of the book, To Kill a Lion by Bruce Lengeman. One of the other things that I want to get to is that you've talked about, you don't have to say sex is bad. You're not asking men to be less sexual to break the pornography problem that they may have, right?
I have two words for that.
Okay.
God forbid. I consider myself healed and I do not have a lust issue, but my wife is in the next room watching a movie while I do this. She'll come and vouch for me that I'm not less sexual. And I say that not as a joke. I say that in an encouraging way. God made men sexual, but he made men to be sexual and pure. And there's a way that you can be highly sexual. It's coming to the freedom of being sexual without even wanting or needing the devil's junk. And so, yes, definitely the sex and lust are two different things. And so the journey to overcome lust is not the journey to become less sexual.
One of the other points I want to make is, you were talking about Ruthie, your wife, who's just a huge part of, she encouraged you to write the book To Kill a Lion, right? Sure. The intimacy that comes, the new level of intimacy when you're no longer fantasizing about other people or looking to other people for sexual pleasure, the intimacy, and we're live with a dog right here. The level of intimacy probably really improves. Like, I imagine the closeness, not just physically, but emotionally, makes a big difference, right?
Okay, Suzanne, I don't think we've talked about this too much, maybe when Ruthie was on the one program, but I will tell you, let me tell you how it works, because this is just profound. This is God doing something brilliant. You see, when you have a sexual experience, it is on the same level of a cop pulling you off on the side of the road for a speeding ticket. Every time you go past that place, you think, you slow down, right?
Right.
For years and years to come, because the brain releases epinephrine and it lodges neurotransmitters to remind you of that place. The same thing happens in sexuality, okay? That when you have a sexual high, your brain, epinephrine and dopamine and other neurotransmitters come together to give you a remembrance of that high, that crave. But guess what? When you only have one sexual partner, your wife, she becomes the deja vu. I often say, Ruthie's in my blood, because Ruthie will always be beautiful, because I don't allow my mind to go outside and create other desires and other lusts for women. Oh, and that's all about intimacy.
It's all about intimacy, and that's what matters to women. Lois, thank you for checking in from Chambersburg, PA. Always enjoy hearing inspiration and advice from Bruce and Ruthie. You're lucky to have them up there. It's the area you live in. I tried to convince them to buy a house down here on our street. There was a house for sale, but I think you're going to keep them for a while.
2 days, 2 days ago, Chambersburg had some major storms. We went down there yesterday. My daughter lives close to that. Yeah. And there were branches down all over the place off exit 20 there.
Wow. Yeah. Well, be safe. Anyway. Well, you're not going to get away from storms in Florida. So, yeah, all right. We are talking with Bruce Lengeman from To Kill a Lion. It's an amazing book. It's a book that if you know someone with pornography problems, pornography addiction, male, female, doesn't matter. It's a book that you probably have never heard a message from any other type of pornography book, or breaking pornography, I should say. Want to remind you, leave a comment. Let us know. We're going to put you in a drawing for the book. Bruce, we're going to jump into now about the top 5 misconceptions of pornography addiction. And you talk about that you're not sinning when your sexual drive is working the way it's supposed to. You're sinning when you make a conscious choice to say yes to immoral temptations. Can you talk about that?
Oh, that too is a big subject, Suzanne, because some of the contemporary sexual recovery programs that, again, make men feel as if their sexuality is their enemy and they always have to keep it on a leash, has caused men to think that every time they see a woman, okay, you're walking down the street and you see a woman that's not dressed properly on the other side of the street, and down inside your sexuality is the way I said, says ungawa.
Yeah.
I mean, that looks good. And it's like, well, welcome to life. Welcome to normality. But you see, there's a process there that a man needs to go through. And that's the process that says, that's beautiful. Thank you, God, that you made women beautiful. Thank you that I'm sexual, but that's not my garden. And that's someone else's child. And I am not going to take that woman and the Bible says, every man is drawn away when he is tempted. But when lust has conceived, it bringeth forth sin. And it's the place where you willfully say yes to that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have to drive somewhere an alternative route so I don't see a girl in a bathing suit advertising double McGum, or whatever, because I look and I say, I am comfortable with who I am. I know my own heart. And when I see those things, yes, they're very attractive to me because I'm sight-oriented. But I have learned that with the Lord, it's not a battle not to bring those things into your home, into your heart.
So what I'm hearing you say is that's not a sin to recognize an attractive person of the opposite sex, a beautiful woman, and you're shopping and, oh my gosh, I just sinned. I just looked at her breasts. Like, no, it's when that you recognize it. That is not the sin. You're saying that when it manifests itself into an unhealthy area, that's when so we don't need to feel guilty about recognizing or acknowledging beauty.
No, in fact, I tell men all the time, you need to get in touch with your own heart. In fact, men need to be conditioned to a sexual society. And so, but again, some of the historic contemporary programs, historic and contemporary programs, they center in on guilt and shame. Guilt and shame only makes the problem worse.
Yeah, yeah.
And, yeah.
James has a great comment here. He said, we're going to jump to James. Okay, there's James. He's saying that sexual addictions are the silent killer. And he was just talking about how much time that sexual addiction takes from your life and what you could be accomplishing. And it's just really a dead end.
Yes. It is a dead end. And
a time killer.
What's that?
And a time killer. Yeah.
I'll tell you where it's a dead end, James. And I'm sure you know this, but our sexuality, our sexual physiology wasn't given to us by God to just hop in a sack with a woman or look at a screen. Our God-given sexuality was for far more than that. the testosterone that men have, that highly sexual nature, is given to us to be creative. Our sexual nature is behind our ability to be intimate with our wife, to care and be intimate and nurture our children in that way. That testosterone, that sexual physiology is designed to enable men and motivate men to take risks. It is a motivational experience. So, and you only have a very limited amount of dopamine in your body, and you need dopamine to learn everything. And when you take it and you go through a porn thing, and go through a porn binge for a whole day or 2 days or whatever, and by the end of that, you don't have any dopamine. So you're frustrated trying to get that back. What happens is you don't have any of the motivation left to be intimate, to take risks, to be wild at heart.
You wasted it, right?
Yeah, you wasted it. And then you wait till it builds up again. And then when it builds up again, all of a sudden you get tempted. You go back to the same old cycle.
We're talking with Bruce Lengeman, the author of To Kill a Lion. Fantastic book, transforming your life through sexual freedom for people with pornography problems that are just caught in that cycle. And Crystal's got a great question. She's asking, how do you counsel single people?
Well, that Crystal, I get asked that all the time, every conference, and I will tell you how I counsel them. I will say this: I have not met more single men struggling with pornography than married men. Lust is lust. And you say, well, married men have outlets. And I say, so do single men. You know, single men who have problems with lust, you know, many times they can be immoral with their girlfriend or masturbation. And that's a release to them. You see, because lust and healthy, wholesome sexuality are two different things. And so I say to single people, I say, you know, if you have a lust problem when you're single, when you get married, it's not just going to go away. And I know what Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, but nothing in that verse said that a sex problem is going to go away just because you're married. Now, if there's a burning inside you and it's like, wow, I want to get married so I can have that kind of relationship with a partner for the rest of my life and share real love, that's one thing. But he wasn't saying that if you have a lust problem, that'll go away. And there's a verse in the Bible, and I tell them this, there's a verse in Matthew in the Beatitudes where Jesus said, whoever looks at a woman to lust after her has committed adultery already in his heart. That word there, now see what has happened is some of the contemporary teachers have used that word lust every time your sexuality feels a sexual feeling for a woman, or a woman feels that sexual thing for a man, whatever. That's not where it's at. That word lust in Matthew 5 is the exact word covet. That's relating back to the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not covet. And if they could have translated that covet, say, whoever covets a woman. But that word lust there is not a sexual term. Now, do I believe that we are allowed to lust and bring it to our spirit? No, absolutely not. But to give the impression that every time a man or a woman's sexuality is working well is sin, no.
Crystal, she followed up. She said, thank you. So men won't die if they don't get sex. They can wait for marriage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're not going to die. It's not a death sentence.
No, in fact, very healthy. Because if you wait till you get married, then you'll be so delighted about your marital sexual or partner. And Ruthie, and we have a testimony on that. Ruthie, for the 44 years we've been married, we have had a very fulfilling sexual relationship, and I don't want anything outside the box.
Mm-hmm. And you haven't been, you've had the opportunities every other man walking down the street has had. Hey, Paul, thank you for checking in from Delaware. We appreciate that. Andy has a great question. How do you approach this topic with your spouse? I mean, this is probably one of the most secretive parts of people's lives. How do you go, okay, let's sit down. I have to tell you something. How do you do that?
You'll probably do it different than I did. After the counselor confronted me, and he told me I had a sexual problem, he became my counselor. But I couldn't tell Ruthie because, you see, this is the area that she trusted me so much. And I said, I'm going to get victory over this thing, this internal thing. And maybe in 3 years or maybe never will I tell her. And I went away for a hotel. Ruthie thought I was going away to pray, and I was. And I got so much healing when I found out what was going on inside my heart. Oh, it was an amazing time. So about a week later, I'm teaching a seminar with John and Sharon Charles at Abundant Living Ministries. And Ruthie and I had the first session. And then we had John and Sharon had a session. And then there was a break. And then Ruthie and I were to come back on to the third session. And so we were in the waiting room. And right in between 2 times that Ruthie and I were supposed to speak, I dropped the bomb on Ruthie and told her what had happened. And her response was something I could never understand. She goes, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And I am so relieved, and I'll walk with you on this journey. And I respect you more because you had the courage to share it with me. That might not be everyone's experience, but I can tell you of a man who's in ministry that he has overseen the ministries of many, many people. And he was a raving sexual addict. And he read my book. And there was one thing, this is the only one I've heard of that, where he got victory is when he came out of the sexual closet and he brought his wife into the journey. That made the difference.
So you're basically saying maybe pray about it. And just by being honest, you may be surprised by your spouse's reaction.
Yes. And I'm careful to say that because there are women who may need counsel after their husband reveals that thing, because if they've been under some of the influences of legalism or maybe religion that puts sexuality in a box. So it's, I'm not saying that I would tell every guy, just go out and tell your wife, but I believe that's the goal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mike has a great question. Kind of making a point, and he wants to clarify that, God's beauty is all around us, and it's okay to acknowledge it. I think this kind of goes back to the umgawa, in case you and I have talked. I know what umgawa is. That means, holy cow, like that's amazing. Like if you see a delicious looking, Italian plate or something, umgawa, that's gorgeous. That's beautiful. You can do that with a woman or a man, right?
Yes.
So Mike is saying, so it's okay if you acknowledge. It's just, when you bring this into sin, like what's that line? That's what I want to know. What is the line between what Mike is saying from, okay, you acknowledge it, to it's now sin?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Mike, I see a picture of you. You look like a wild and heart guy. And if you're a wild and heart guy, you're probably highly sexual. And I say that in a good way. But you ask, is that what I'm saying? That's indeed what I'm saying. That it's a place where you take it into your heart. And that's the freedom, and you say, what's the line? I can't tell you. No, I can't tell you the line. I don't know if there is a line. I just know that you have to know your heart, and you have to know the grace of God, and you have to know the forgiveness of God. He said, if you sin he said, if your brother comes to you and sins 7 times in one day and 7 times says, I repent, thou shalt forgive him. Well, if Jesus said that, then that means that's how he is with us. Now, he doesn't want us to sin 7 times in one day, but forgiveness isn't the issue, but acceptance is.
It's a lot to think about. That's powerful stuff. And if you are intrigued at all by what we're talking about, that cycle of pornography, if you think, oh, you know what, it's not a problem for me, I just dabble in it, I just do a little this or a little, listen, why don't you let the book speak to you, let God speak to you with what the situation is. We're not here judging. We're not telling you have a problem. We're just saying, give it a shot. Maybe there's some things in your life that are off course. You're missing the mark of what God's plan was for you, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the missing the mark is misalignments. We have to find out where our heart's misaligned.
All right, well, go ahead, and we're getting close to kind of wrapping up, but if you want to leave a comment, even what state you're watching from, we'll put you in a drawing for a book. And I'm going to guess that you've got quite a lot of books we're going to be giving out, so don't be shy to leave a comment. Bruce, one of the things you said is once you're a sexual addict, you're just always a sexual addict. And that's just not true, right?
My book opens up with Tiger Woods and his confession, and somebody asked this counselor about, is Tiger Woods healed from his sexual addiction? And this counselor made the comment, says, once an addict, always an addict. And I say, God forbid. Maybe once an addict, a high percentage of people remain addicts. But I've met too many people who have gotten to the roots of the issue. Drug addicts, workaholics, food addicts, sexual addicts, and on and on and on, a whole host that have gotten victory over their addiction permanently because they've found the truth that set them free.
Bruce, I want to hear one of those success stories from you.
Well, I'll go back to one that I think in our chat one time I told you before, and it's just one that rings out, and that is I was teaching a group of ex-drug addicts, sexual addicts. I don't know if they were all ex, but they were in a school in London, Ontario. It was a teen challenge school, and I was asked to come in 1 week, teach them on sexual addiction and the roots of sexual addiction. And so what I did is the whole way through the week, I taught them how certain things that are done in the brain and certain fetishes they have, they link back to a wound in your life or a place of criticism or a place where you were sexually abused or something like that. And there's a whole host of things. Well, and this, I like to tell the story because this guy was so clear. I met him at the end of the week, and he said, thank you so much. He goes, I just feel so much better. I said, well, did you find some healing? And he said, oh, yes. I said, tell me about it. He said, well, I had a fetish, a sexual fetish. And that was whenever I was in a relationship with a girl, I always was committed to give her the greatest sexual high that a man could give a woman. That was, I was driven to do that. And then he said, obviously you can figure out I ruined a lot of relationships that way. And I was stumped. I said, oh, well, what was the root? Because I had no clue.
Good question. Sure.
And he said, Bruce, he said, don't you see? I could never please my mother.
Wow.
No matter what I did, I couldn't please her. And I had this wound down inside me. And so my brain took up what I call a pica. It's when it creates a counterfeit fix for a problem it doesn't know how to fix, which is behind all addictions, and it created this insatiable desire to try to fill the pain of not being able to please his mother by trying to please a woman sexually. And he repented of that, renounced that, and declared right there, he said, I am free of that fetish. Neat story, isn't it? Huh?
That's a great story.
Oh, Suzanne, so many. I could go on and on and on with story after story. I get letters from people write into my website, and I don't take the glory. It's just God's truth.
Yeah.
The truth sets you free.
Absolutely. And it's a joy on the other side that if you think it's just a quick fix, having that pornography, any kind of quick fix, any kind of, food or like you said, drink, you need to go on top of it. You need to go more, bigger, more extreme. And when you finally get to the root of the problem, like you said, it's, I imagine, just an amazing relief and goodness.
Lust doesn't enjoy the familiar. But God-given healthy sexuality does. And so men who are into pornography aren't having wholesome, healthy sex with their wife. They're fantasizing.
All right. Well, I hate to do this. We do have to start to wrap up, though, but I cannot encourage you enough. Think about getting To Kill a Lion. It's transforming your life through sexual freedom with Bruce Lengeman, an amazing, amazing guy. His wife, Ruthie, they're just making such a huge difference. And I want to encourage you, think about purchasing To Kill a Lion. Look into it. Find out more. Bruce, final thoughts?
Well, the final thoughts are, I know that sexual addiction is not getting better, even in the church. It's not. I don't know the statistics. Some of the most reputable statistics say 70% of all guys in Bible-believing churches struggle with it on a regular basis. And I know that the 70% of those guys are doing it don't want to do it. Now, do they have the ability in their will to stop it? Yes. The problem is, when you're sexually addicted, your brain is constantly saying lust, 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 lust. And yeah, you have the ability to stop it, but the problem is your brain is assaulting you with temptation continuously till finally you just give in and do it. And then you feel guilty, and then the cycle continues. And so I just pray and believe that God will use To Kill a Lion to open up the door to so many people who need to be free.
Bruce, thank you. Have a great night. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your comments. We will be getting these books out to you. I'll contact you for who gets them. Julie, thanks for checking in. Mary, Bruce, thank you for a great book launch event live. So appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you.
We'll talk again.
All right. God bless you, Suzanne.